It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre.
Hey, I'm Tara, one of your hosts of the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast. This season, you'll notice we're doing things a little bit differently. Firstly, we're going to be having some very special guests join us. And secondly, we're going to be repurposing some really awesome older content from before the start of the podcast when we were broadcasting only to our Let's Talk Polyamory private Facebook group. Included in this is our popular alphabet series, where we went through the alphabet discussing terms and concepts, not only just related to non-monogamy and polyamory, but covering things like sexuality, identity, wellness, and so on. And all of these terms and more are going to be included in our picture book, which is going to be released later in 2020. Super exciting. And now on to the episode.
Hey, Andre.
Hey, Tara. What's going on?
Not much.
So I kept my glasses on because I'm finding out that as I get older, my eyesight is getting smaller and smaller, less and less. But yesterday I went to put on my glasses and the arm just came right off. I got to go get an appointment. So they are my lightweight version of my glasses. Cool.
Yeah.
But they have those little panache ones where you just like have,
Oh,
just
like the little thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, I could get like a
monocle.
That's right.
A monocle.
Exactly. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm just
Morning
going to have
coffee.
a sip of this coffee. It's my second coffee.
Yeah.
I feel like I needed it today. I don't know why.
It's one of those days. One of the other things that we were doing sometimes, I don't know if we were doing it on this, but kind of like to restart and get like a base and connectedness, is that exercise where we face each other and we,
we did do that.
and we look at each other in our eyes. We look at each other's eyes and we put our hands over each other's heart or someplace
Nearby.
semi-appropriate. Watch the thumb action down there, y'all.
They can't see that.
No, but we were to be connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a check-in. So it's interesting. I was just working with somebody who was talking about making a check-in with their partner and how do we go about it. And when we do check-in, what are we checking for and how are we checking in, right? So I might want a certain way of checking in. That's great for me, but is it known to you? Do you know what I want as a check-in? And, how do we know that? So we got to let it be known. Right?
It's interesting. You were talking to someone about that. I was actually talking to someone as well by message, and they were talking about being at an event, and they weren't verbally checking in with their wife, but they were looking at them and trying to gauge their reactions, but not actually talking to them, which was interesting. Right. I think sometimes that's great, and I think it's awesome to try to make eye contact and see, but if you don't talk, sometimes it's hard to, I think, really know what's going on, because we can make some assumptions, bad and good.
Without a doubt. Yeah, and I mean, eyesight's great if you have that as part of your agreement and you feel comfortable and you think you have a good read on the person. Sometimes, we're not able to make the eye contact. We might kind of feel around and I know your touch, you know my touch, we feel that way. Or it is words of affirmation, right? I don't see you. I'm like, hey, you okay? And you're like, yeah, I feel good. All right, like, let's go on. Or not.
But it's all about communication, which segues well into our topic for today, which is our third in our alphabet series. And this is C.
The C's.
The
And look, I even did it. I did it the right way. So you
Yes.
can get it backwards.
Did I do it right?
Flip,
Oh,
right?
yeah, cool. I don't know, but they might see it the other way.
No,
I'm
but
not
that's
sure.
why.
Oh, okay,
I
cool.
think so. I think we got that right. We'll find out if we did or didn't.
Awesome. So let's jump in.
All right, let's
So
do it.
C. So we did a poll in the group, which was super fun. We had some suggestions. We really appreciate everyone's humor in coming up with suggestions. In fact, one of them we're using. But one of them was Canadians and their undervalued sexiness. So we're Canadian.
Wait a second. They're undervalued sexiness? So
Syme suggested that.
Okay, we're going to out Syme. Syme, what's going on here? Undervalued. So I moved back to Canada especially because of the outright sexuality that Canadians have. That's my idea. But
but I don't know if people generally in the world think that Canadians are sexy.
They better start.
Hopefully we're changing that with our group.
Well, as a nation. Anyway,
there was
sexy people around the world, yes.
There was another suggestion by Jan, only voted on by him, but it was for creme patisserie. Delicious.
Sounds sexy.
I think it's a sexy pastry, but it's also, I think, could have sexual connotations.
Well, I think
I'm sure.
La crème, yes. There was a 4-letter word starting with a C that was left off And I was surprised. I thought maybe some people might want to talk about that. Some people do coke during sex. What were you thinking?
Oh, coke. I was thinking of cock.
I know. Well, I wasn't thinking about cock. I was thinking about other things.
But Mark Zool in the group had a great.
Mm-hmm. He did.
His was cock-fidence, which I really like. I kind of that's a confident. I think in your cock.
It's so fantastic because we go to a nude beach and I think sometimes you see some guys standing there like Captain Morgan and they're having a lot of cock-fidence. So it's a wonderful position.
Yes,
to have.
Sometimes they play around with theirs while at the beach. I know someone was doing that this weekend.
But it was an interesting thing. So they were perhaps touching themselves.
Yes, they were definitely touching themselves, and it was definitely with the intent of getting erect because they kept doing it. Yeah.
Okay. But why not? Why not? So, because it brings up an interesting question. So I could be like this and self-soothing and be like, everything's okay. I feel good. I'm wonderful. Or I could be, touching. But all of a sudden, if parts of my body were to touch other parts of my body in certain motions, then that becomes like nothing. But what if it is, in fact, a self-soothing thing, kind of like feeling okay? I mean, there's always going to be some line that crosses, but can I touch it for like one or two strokes just because it simply feels good and I'm reassuring myself or adjusting? At what point do we cross that line and it becomes kind of like icky?
I don't know. It's like public displays of affection. Some people don't like those either.
Well,
so it could fall in the same category, right?
So being mindful of.
Okay, let's get on with the topics. Okay, and then the other suggestion, which was funny, which we were including because it got so many votes, was cookie. So we're going to get to that.
Cookie.
So
cookies are great.
Yeah, cookies are great. So let's start with number one. I got the most votes, which was consensual non-monogamy. Pretty obvious choice. So we're going to
consensual non-monogamy. What does that mean? Consensual non-monogamy.
So some people use consensual non-monogamy and some people use ethical non-monogamy. And they're considered pretty much like the same thing. When I did a bit of research on the definitions, I like consensual non-monogamy because the word consent is in it.
I like ethical because it means that I'm being forthright. I'm being open about it. And all parties involved are aware of it. It's consenting.
Yeah.
But it's ethically that we've not held things back, that we're being transparent in it.
Right. So the definition that I got could apply to both. I think both.
You have a definition?
Heath, and the name I cannot pronounce, Schlapalakadinger, a psychologist at UC Berkeley. Yeah, is that what it is? Consensual non-monogamy is an umbrella term that describes any relationship in which all participants explicitly agree to have multiple concurrent sexual and or romantic relationships.
Oh, wait a second. That they agree to have multiple? Well, no, you can be, I don't know if I agree with that 100%. Multiple concurrent sexual and romantic relationships.
Yeah, I don't think they agree that you can. I don't think it's necessarily the fact when we get into
but it says agree to have.
Agree to have. Okay.
It's all about the words. It's all about how we define it. So
I would say, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, go for it.
No, I would say maybe agree to have, or that are aware and consenting the possibility that there are multiple relationships happening.
Yeah.
Not that they agree to have them. Because you might not be having them.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? So you might not have that in practice, but you might be open to it. So you're in agreement with the possibility of the openness to it.
Yeah. And consenting to it.
But, some people would say it's semantics, right? That it's, whether it's consensual or ethical, that we are being open. It's open relating. It is that we're being transparent. We're not making decisions for the other person by either not getting their consent or not divulging all of the details of it, right? So that we're not deciding for the other person. So in my past, when I was monogamish, I would not be so transparent. There were things that I would not talk about, which in essence, honestly, was being unethical because I was not giving the other person all of the information necessary. I was not being forthcoming. I was not getting their consent to participate in this way. I was just avoiding the truth. That avoidant position was not really ethical, in all honesty. So,
creatively leaving out information for the purpose of dodging a bullet, potentially. And I think the important part, which you said is that everybody is consenting. Because I think sometimes there may be an agreement. You and I may have an agreement, but another person involved may not understand what our agreements are in terms of that relationship.
Oh, there's that too. Somebody else the other day was talking about their partner going on a date and what they thought about this. And they had mentioned the idea, well, we don't know yet about this other person if they're monogamous or not.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So the person in question, not the future datee, but the partner in question, were they not being so transparent? Should they have come out and said, this is where I'm at, this is the type of thing I'm looking for? And sometimes it is rather difficult to say that in the date, on the first date. My mother took this, she recycled.
I love
she
that
took
tie.
two
That's
ties.
like one of my favorites.
Yeah, when I was wearing long ties, she combined them.
Yeah, I like the plaid. I can see how you might not want that as a long necktie.
Yeah.
But I like the pink. But anyways, I think that's important because people do ask that question, I think, a lot, is when do you divulge it? And I mean, my personal stance, and I think you got to decide what your own stance is. My personal view is that I disclose it upfront because I don't want people to be surprised.
Right. And then they might be kind of like disappointed, offended, angered, like, why did you waste my time? But also you're wasting your own time in a sense too, right? If you are having one expectation and you don't announce it, and then you've invested, and then they come to say, well, no, that's not my shtick, then you've kind of wasted your time as well, right? So, but I wonder if there is some hesitation, if we're not wanting to be so open about our transfer, is it because we're having some exception with announcing that position?
Maybe.
Well, if I feel more comfortable about it, I just say it in a very matter-of-fact way. If I'm not as secure in it, I might think that, well, it has to be kind of set up so I can frame it the right way, or whatever the considerations are.
Exactly.
So is it an indication of my own acceptance of it, my own comfort level? Something you can
No,
say.
it's interesting. It's definitely something to debate because people say when you meet someone for the first time and you're just dating, like you have no obligation. You don't have to tell them, oh, I want a long-term relationship. I want to get married. I want to have kids. Like people just go out and date. So I think sometimes people use that.
Right.
But I think.
And yet some people do. Some people say they're looking, to start a family. They're looking for marriage. They want to know, are we on this same
pathway?
Yeah.
In the profiles, if you do. Anyways, let's get on with it because we have lots to cover today.
No, but I think this is pretty important. How do we announce our position? Because it is the base from which we're going to jump off, right?
Okay. So did you want to say something more about it?
No, that's all I have to say.
Okay. I didn't want to cut you off. Okay. So types of consensual non-monogamy or relational diversity, because some of these are not non-monogamy, I'd say. Okay. So before we get into it, a disclaimer I think is important because we've just selected some 11 main types, and we pulled these out of Jessica Fern's Polysecure just to give an overview of kind of what's out there. But I think there's lots of variations and nuances and also different definitions for them as well. So I think the thing that we always say, like to you guys, to our clients, is the only right way to do non-monogamy is the way that's right for you.
Right. But in doing so, again, I would hope that we do it in a way that is in consideration of the other, by being consensual, by being ethical about it.
Yeah. My only reason to say that is because I think sometimes if you're in some of the groups, people can be very judgmental about how people do polyamory, or if they use that term, or ethical or consensual non-monogamy. And it can cause, I think, people to feel not welcomed or belonged, or that something that they're doing is wrong.
Right.
So I don't want people to have that feeling.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the other thing to say is that you can decide if you want to align to a certain label or not. And also, we always say as well, is that you can also decide if you want to stay in that area. Like if you're with someone and you decide to be a certain way, you can always change your mind at any point. I think sometimes people get stuck that you say it once and then that's it.
That's your label for life.
Label for life.
But not at all, right? We are plastic. We are forever changing, and not only over time, but from situation to situation.
For sure.
So, you might be with one group of people and feel one way, and then go to another group of people or by yourself and feel another way, and that's perfectly A-okay, right? So that we become aware of it, and then we become comfortable with it by that awareness and by normalizing it and saying that this is how I feel, this is who I am, and that's okay.
Yeah, and everyone's consenting and aware.
Right.
And can decide what they want to do about it. Yeah, so like I said, 11 different types, and we're going to show them from high to low sexual exclusivity and high to low emotional exclusivity.
But for the disclaimer, this is not exhaustive in its listing. This is just...
Yeah, I think there's some other things that there's 97 different types or whatever.
And if you have issue with it, speak to our legal department. Otherwise, let's hear the list. Let's go for it.
Awesome. Okay, well, first I'm going to show a diagram.
Okay. Oh, diagrams. Love that.
Ooh. So this is directly from Jessica Fern's Polysecure.
Yeah, great book. If you haven't read it, take a look at it. There's a lot of good information on that.
Right. So you can see at the top, you've got high sexual exclusivity, and then to low sexual at the bottom.
Low
and
sexual
then,
exclusivity.
Yeah. And then left to right, high emotional exclusivity to low emotional. So monoamorous to polyamorous.
Right.
So,
you know, it's interesting. I was thinking about the word polyamory, and really, as we already know, it does speak to many loves. But it's not to say that not all relationships are going to contain love. And it seems like the only alternative, or very often the default alternative, is then we are considered swingers.
right.
But what about someplace in between that, right? Because swinging somehow feels like, well, we go to a dark room, we throw our keys in a fishbowl, and whoever it comes up with, it comes up with. But it's not to say that we don't have emotional attachment, but it might not go all the way to our being feeling as though it's feelings of love.
Yes.
It might be just feelings of closeness and endearment.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of this diagram, just really quickly, high sexual exclusivity and high emotional exclusivity, monogamy, monogamish, and polyfidelity kind of fit into that top left-hand corner. The right-hand corner, high sexual exclusivity, but low emotional exclusivity, polyamorous and asexual and polyintimates. And then when you drop below the line, lower sexual exclusivity, but high emotional exclusivity, open marriage, relationship, and swinging. And then to the right, you've got the lower sexual exclusivity and lower emotional exclusivity is hierarchical polyamory, non-hierarchical polyamory, solo polyamory, and relationship anarchy. Woo! All right.
Yeah,
well, we're gonna go into the definitions, but I just wanted to kind of show the quadrants, and then they range in those areas. Okay.
It's good to see it laid out like that for people who are visual like myself. It's good to be able to look at it conceptually like that.
Yeah, it's like one of the best diagrams I've seen. I'm sure there's others. If people know of others, feel free to share them in the comments. Would love to see those. So let's start with monogamy.
All right.
So monogamy.
Wonderful.
So traditionally considered a one-to-one relationship between two people forming a couple. It's usually demonstrated by being exclusive with each other, both sexually and emotionally.
Forever and ever.
If you go outside of that, it's considered cheating or being disloyal.
Yeah, so it's very defined, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room, right? There's not a lot of room for spontaneity or doing anything like that. But what if we're monogamous and we decide to be experimental? We're on vacation, like, hey, let's leave our marriage certificate on the shore. We're going on a cruise. Let's do it. What would that be like?
Well, that would be what was considered monogamish, perhaps.
Oh, monogamish.
Yeah. So
what is that, monogamish?
So mostly sexually and emotionally exclusive, mostly, but periodically have extracurricular activities like that. So maybe on a vacation, work trip liaisons, or vacations apart. As
somebody once said, a more interesting marriage. No judgment.
No judgment. So that can be together. So monogamish. I think that term was made famous by, oh my God, I'm going to forget his name.
Savage.
Dan Savage, thank you. Yeah, monogamish. I think he's one of the first people that kind of coined that. All right. So then moving into
polyfidelity.
Sure, polyfidelity. So polyfidelity is included in this group because polyfidelity is when there's a sexual relationship that involves more than two people, but these people are exclusive to each other. So they don't go outside that. So it could be a more than one, but that you're exclusive. So like a polycule, they're usually closed to any outside partner. So that's polyfidelity.
I think we saw a lot of that in COVID because of the constraints, the considerations of bringing not only somebody new, but something new into it, right? Because there was this idea of we might bring in a contagion. There might be something going on. So let's kind of go into this sort of closed polycule where we will feel more secure that way. And I think it gave birth to that on a lot of people who would not have normally participated in that, felt reassured in doing so that way.
Right. But some people, this is their way of life. Like it might be a couple of couples living together and forming a polycule, and they just mix amongst themselves.
Right. So not only is it physically, sexually closed, but emotionally, they will also have that.
Right. And I think sometimes, and it doesn't have to, polycules don't have to be this way either. Sometimes polycules have people outside, but that
special guests.
they have partners that are outside but polyfidelity refers to when it's more exclusive.
Very cool.
Okay, moving along to swinging.
Ooh, swinging.
So that's when there's a practice of engaging with others, but it's usually, so focus is usually sexual rather than emotional.
Right.
But I think, like you said, I think there's lots of variations on that.
But swinging typically is known as mostly a physical sexual.
Yeah.
Form, right?
And it's usually two people, like
So
a
a
partner,
couple.
Playing together either in the same room or separately. You might go to parties,
party,
clubs, that sort of thing.
Fishbowl party.
Yeah, fishbowl.
You know what that is?
You put your keys in, and then you pull someone else's keys in. Yeah. I think they did that in an episode of Riverdale. They did that. They had a key party, which I thought was kind of interesting.
So in that scenario where they were swinging, they went as a couple and they picked up somebody else's keys and they were going to hook up with that couple. Does that mean it's just couple to couple, or would there be like any breakout orgies? Or,
well, I think our
minutes.
own experience of swinging at going to clubs and parties, there tends to be a lot more mixing.
So it could go just beyond one couple and another couple. You might take all the keys and just throw them in.
You might take one of each key.
Right, okay.
Or like keep swapping out keys.
So whatever works for you, right? Whatever works for you, you announce your comfort level. Are you into this? You feel like doing this? Yeah?
Okay,
let's go at it. And it might be like, okay, you know what, time out. I've had enough. I need to take a coffee break and let's go to a safe place.
And I think for some people, swinging is like their regular, like that's what they do. They do it, varying of frequencies. I think for us, we do a bit of a combination of like swinging and polyamory, which we'll get into.
It's interesting though, the idea that it would be primarily physical sexual based. I wonder what is on the other side of that, where we are wanting to have the emotional part, but not necessarily the physical sexual demonstration. How might we become emotionally involved? Or is that what straight people do? Is that like, and by straight, I mean your parents. Like, do they have emotional relationships with people, but they don't necessarily have sexual, physical relationships?
For sure. Like my parents have.
Friendships, right?
Yeah, friendships.
It's called friendship.
It's called friendship.
Strange concept. So you're friends, but we're not going to get naked together. Interesting.
It's such an interesting concept.
What a way to spend an evening.
Well, it's funny though, but we have friends.
We've done that. It's like a new kink, right? We were both.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we did do that.
We went for dinner to my boyfriend's, your metamors, and his wife.
Yeah, and I kept my shirt on the whole time.
The whole time. I did wear a sexy dress though.
Yeah, you did. Well, you're always
a little naughty, but I mean, there was kids there. So.
No.
It was fun. It was super fun.
Yeah, we are housebroken. We can do that as well.
Well, and we also have friends that we play with as well, but we don't always do that. Like during the hockey playoffs, we went and hung out with some friends and watched hockey, ate snacks and hung out.
Business. Yeah.
Any open marriage or open relationship. Slightly different than swinging, I'd say.
How so?
In which, swinging often it's a couple decides to do an activity together, and they may go somewhere and play with different people, but it's exclusive to that particular event. Okay. Whereas an open marriage or an open relationship, you might have either relationships together, and you may have relationships outside of that. Right. So you may have another partner that your partner's not with.
Going back to the swinging part. Yeah, it is mostly couples that do it, but there are relationships where, it's like a open relationship of sorts where only one person will go. So one person will be mono and the other person will be poly.
Yeah. So I think open marriages and open relationships, there can be an emotional attachment to your other partners, but you still have the main connection with your main partner, I guess you could say, nesting partner or primary partner, whatever you like to call it. So slightly different than when you move into the area of polyamory, I think. Although I think there's like probably a really fine line differentiation between these two, depending on where you sit with the definition.
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of these things are on a spectrum, if you will, where there's a lot of overlap. You get into one neighborhood and suddenly you're in the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we fluctuate between neighborhoods.
Well, for sure. And I mean, it depends on, again, like where we're at with us, where we're at with them, where we're at the time of month or year or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we don't have to put those life labels on.
Yeah.
Nobody's asking us to. We can decide what's good for us at the moment. And we can have one position and then find out, well, you know what, I'm wanting something else at the moment and go to that.
Yeah.
Nothing's marked in stone. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Just talk about it and find out where we're at.
Communication.
Always.
Right. So polyamory is considered the next level up, I'd say, to open relationships or an open marriage, where there's a bit more of a emotional investment. It's generally higher than being casual. So you have both an emotional and likely, depending on what kind of, because you can be asexual and polyamorous, we'll get to that one. There's more of an emotional connection.
Right.
Yeah. And so the intention is to have multiple loving partners. So there's a few different types of polyamory. So there's one that's called hierarchical polyamory. And some people really don't like this term.
And other people insist on it.
Yes. Yeah, people feel that if you're polyamorous, that there shouldn't be hierarchy. So you shouldn't have one relationship that's closer, more important than the other. Yeah, and I think it's really hard to, even if you don't call it hierarchical, I think it's really hard because your relationships with people are so different.
Right. But what is the danger? What is the consideration in having that kind of hierarchy? I mean, I guess we say if we have children, we shouldn't love one child more than the other. And yet we do have preferences. I mean, I love chocolate and I love vanilla, and I might have a preference. But what is the consideration? Why should we want to not have hierarchy?
Well, I think there's ideas when you have hierarchy that there's like a primary partner. So you would be considered my primary partner. And then there might be people that are called, terrible term, but people use it, a secondary or a tertiary. And then I think that's where people get a bit uncomfortable with it. And I can see why, because you don't want people to be considered as secondary.
Maybe, what if I was wanting to be your primary, but not wanting to be somebody else's primary? What if I wanted the role of secondary or tertiary? Right now, tertiary is about as much as I can handle, and I'd like to announce myself as a tertiary partner.
And I think people do want that, which is why I don't necessarily have a huge problem with the idea of it. Again, that goes back to consent.
Right.
And being ethical about it, right?
But also maybe the term, right? Secondary. So if you're a secondary person, are you a second-class citizen? I wonder how we could reconceptualize it if we could name it in any other way that sounded like, could we say you're the supportive partner, or you are, so we don't feel like you're second, maybe you're the co-pilot as opposed to the pilot, or whatever.
I like that.
Co-captain, whatever it might be. But maybe it's in the announcement that we don't want to be second class. We don't want to be second thought or second fiddle or any of those things. Maybe being number two could be perfectly fantastic.
Well, it could be for some people. They don't want the pressure of being in a relationship, right? They might want to be that to many people.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I'm seeing it was saying, I think it's impossible not to have hierarchy. Yeah, I think it's impossible not to have some sort of something.
Even if we don't label it that way, we might have some preference.
Okay. So then there's non-hierarchical, which is where there's no ranking, parent ranking. Everybody gets a seat at the table.
My kitchen table.
And organic growth, thereby allowing for greater power differentials.
Allowing for greater
power differentials.
Right. So
but people would fluctuate from time to time how much you spend time with them, maybe.
Yeah, and not feeling as though there's an automatic hierarchy where, okay, this person's going to automatically get a first choice or get more dates or whatever it might be. That there might be some shift to it depending on the circumstance or situation or the mood or whatever the variables might be. So the openness to have something outside of this assumed position.
Okay. And then there's solo polyamory. So that's where someone is not in a couple situation or has a primary partner. So that's when the goal is not to be in a couple. It's to be on your own and then integrate with other people. Having autonomy. Yeah. So the investment may still be high for these people in these, like people who are solo in the relationship, for sure. Yeah. It doesn't indicate that at all. I just wanted to say that.
Right. No. For sure. It can be very high.
And then there's relationship anarchy. So that's the idea where you're completely dismantling hierarchy completely, both sexually and romantically. I'd love to hear if people are relationship anarchists in the group. I'd love to hear your take on this, because I think it's something I'm probably less familiar with. What are you thinking?
Well, it reminds me of somebody that I went on a date with, and they had announced to me that they were an anarchist, relationship anarchist. And when I told them that I had a partner, that they were my primary partner, they seemed to take exception with it and really made it quite clear that they did not like my subscribing to them.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think that's true of all relationship anarchists, but it was as though they were wanting to really denounce any participation in hierarchy. They were not wanting that.
Oh, so the fact that you were involved in what they perceived as a hierarchical relationship, they did not want to be part of that.
Exactly. And it felt as though they didn't want me to be part of that I should come to my senses and be like, enough of this tomfoolery.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe because they want people to subscribe to this idea that we could all be autonomous and individual, that we shouldn't have these hierarchies. So I get it, but I don't know what you being with somebody else takes away from them. Maybe they felt it did. I would assume that this is not common with everybody.
No, and I don't think it is common with everybody, but for those of you who do subscribe to it, please let us know your thoughts and feelings and opinions about it.
Awesome. And then there's the term poly-intimates, which was a new term for me when we first put this together for our Jealousy Freedom workshop on day one.
Right.
And so poly-intimates, I'm going to read it because it's harder for me to remember. Sexually exclusive with one partner, but not emotionally exclusive in traditional mono ways. So poly-IMs might be non-sexual partners who are involved with each other in other ways where levels of investment and involvement do not fit conventions of traditional friendships.
Do we know anybody like that? I'm poly-intimate with somebody who is, I'm very fortunate to have in my life. She and I were lovers for a very long time. And then we did not participate that way, but remained very much emotionally invested and in love with each other, but we don't physically.
Okay, so that is a good example.
Very interesting.
Very interesting, yes. So she's now my friend, and we're close as well. So, okay, and the last one, and I mentioned earlier, is polyamorous and asexual. So people who identify as asexual don't experience sexual attraction, but are still romantically involved. So they may be romantically involved with multiple people. So they're polyamorous and asexual. Right. So they're just not having a sexual relationship.
At this time.
And I think it's different than just being friends too. I think there's more, I don't know, it's hard to say.
That's an excellent question. Yeah, what is the difference? So is there still an erotic component to it? Even if we're not sexually, physically demonstrating that, are there still undertones that there's some kind of attraction beyond it being purely platonic?
I would suspect that there would be some connection and some things, right?
Like, in order for it to be considered in this open relating kind of deal. Yeah, because we are talking about things that go beyond just regular friendships.
Okay, so I just wanted to put the diagram up again, and just so people can see where these all are. But like you said earlier, I think our position can be different, and like between multiple people that were in relationships. And I think it's possible to make it work as long as everybody's aware and consenting and all that stuff. And we can also be fluid in what we want to be at any point.
Absolutely, yes. As long as everybody's aware is a good point. But we're not always so self-aware. And a lot of that awareness will come through, doing, not to plug shamelessly for our program, but we do a lot of work in trying to come to terms with all the many different aspects of our sexual psychic components, but that we might not even know what we don't know in a sense. So we might, by exploring this, find out more what are we wanting, not wanting, who we are not, and how to announce those things. And we can find out from the other person who and what they are.
Right. You may start in a certain place and then transition, to be more of one thing or the other, depending on comfort level. So it's like we work with people all the time. And I think it's just important not to get stuck in these like specific definitions and just do what works for you and build your comfort level. And I think that's work that we've done with some of our clients, which has been great.
A lot of people resist using definitions or labels rather.
Yeah.
And I am not wanting to use them either, but it is good sometimes if we can at least announce the definition, find out if it resonates with us or not, and then find out when I say that, I see it as hot, well, what does hot mean to me? And does it mean the same thing to you? What does hot mean to you? Right? If we can announce it, we can then come to a better understanding of it. And whether or not we want to keep that label is for us to say.
Right. Well, even if you say you're polyamorous, like we said, people have different definitions.
Well, look how many different examples we just showed right now, right?
Exactly.
That fall into this big umbrella.
Exactly. So before we move on to the next section, I found a great article in Mind, Body, Green that had 7 things, what it means to practice consensual non-monogamy. And I thought these were great. I picked a few. So number 1, and I think we've covered a bit of this today, is you and your partners agree on what you want and don't want.
Okay, sounds ethical.
Yeah, so that agreement, I think, is one of the things that's super important. And I think making agreements about how relationship dynamics will work is super important. I think it's often the missed step people don't do, or people make assumptions. Do you find that yourself?
Without a doubt, yes.
Yeah. Honesty is vital. yeah, really not much else to say about
The
that.
open, ethical, consensual part, yes, honesty is always. Can I go back to the honesty thing?
Yeah.
And I know I've said this like beating a dead horse, which is a horrible expression. Where the hell does that come from? But anyway, almost like that cats and dogs thing, raining cats and dogs. But the reason why I feel so comfortable in this relationship, not only because you are an amazing partner, wonderful, I'm realizing a lot of the things that I wanted before. But the biggest component really is that I don't lie anymore about it, right? It's not always comfortable. It's not always easy. There's a lot of bumps in the road still at times. But I am honest, not only to you, but to myself, because I might have been able to dodge some stuff before. I might have been able to tell some white lies or darker lies. I might have been able to even get away with it. But at the end of the day, I always knew that it wasn't the right thing. I didn't feel quite right about it. And now I don't have that burden. I'm not putting myself in that position where I feel I have to lie about things. I might not necessarily get what I want all the time, and that's life's terms, but I don't have to lie about it. I'm not reproaching myself for that dishonesty. And it makes a world of difference.
And I don't think I necessarily lied in previous relationships, but I definitely denied. Like the rhyming word, denied what I really wanted. And I think I talked about this in one of the other lives, having to make a choice. I always thought I had to make a choice between people when I was dating, when I was single and dating. And it's like, oh, I don't want to decide. And I didn't realize there was another option. Yeah. Lying and denying.
Yeah. Or withholding. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Number 3 is you need to care about your partner's feelings. And people will debate you on this one because there's this myth that if you're polyamorous or you're involved in any one of the types of open relating is that you got to deal with your own shit. Like if you have resentments or you're feeling uncomfortable or jealous or anything like that, it's solely your responsibility to deal with that stuff.
We don't need our partners to make us feel better. We're responsible for our own feelings, which to some extent is true.
Yeah,
we also want to be considering of other people too, right?
Exactly.
Caring about your partner's feelings is considering how they feel.
Considering how they feel, understanding how you can support them.
But not being responsible.
Not necessarily, you're not responsible for their feelings, but you can support your partner, especially at the beginning when you're just getting into this. It's like working, like you're a team, man. If you've opening up an existing relationship, for example, you guys are a team, and sometimes one person is more comfortable than the other.
You're a team, but what about those who are solo poly or anarchists? Do they feel as though they're on a team? Could you be solo and yet still feel part of that team and then go to the other team, and can you have a bunch of teams?
For sure. You need to care about those partners' feelings. Right. I was just talking about giving the example if you are in a couple that's open. For sure.
Because even if we're not in a so-called relationship, when we start to interact with each other, we become a relationship, right? There's some relation to each other.
Exactly. And then number 4, which is there will be ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
One of the people often say that when you're doing open relating, that there's lots of conversations, but there's also amazing opportunity for growth. And I think for me, I've completely grown a lot as a person as part of this. But there are things it's common to experience, like feelings, like strong feelings too. Jealousy, fear, insecurity.
Lust, all those things.
Yeah, but also good things too, like excitement, increased libido, deepened connections. So there's kind of the spectrum of feelings. And, some of these are hard to navigate and some of them are just plain awesome. So, yeah.
I like what Drang wrote.
We're part of the Let's Talk Polyamory. Yes, exactly. I love it. Yes, you are always part of our team, and we are always here to support all of you. So, yeah.
Solo practitioners who come together. We have still a few things on our list, right? We've got to make sure we get to cookie.
We're going to get to cookie. So the stuff about there will be ups and downs is a good segue into communication. Because when there are ups and downs, it's important to communicate with people.
For sure, because otherwise we're basically left holding it on our own, right? If we don't communicate our thoughts and feelings about it, then how's the other person to know? They may, but we don't know for sure. But when we communicate our thoughts, feelings, concerns, the ups and downs, then we have a much better chance of being heard, being understood, and affecting some change that would be to our benefit, right? We'll be able to process it. So communication. Always.
So what is it you find it hard to communicate to others? What can people do?
Oh, that's actually, it sounds like you already have an answer in mind.
No, I'm just asking you.
Well, we might find out what makes it difficult to announce our position, right? So what are our considerations? So I think that, I'm not going to be understood. I'm going to be ridiculed, and we laugh at that. There's, a whole bunch of things. But are they actual, or are they things that I am projecting? Am I creating the facts out of these feelings when in fact they may not be facts? They might simply be our feelings. So we want to become self-aware. We will allow for some demonstration of introspection to find out what are our feelings really tied to, right? What are they bringing up? What is the significance of them? What are they attached to? What are the origins of them? And being able to be honest with ourselves in that, then we can find out where we come from and how we might be able to adjust that.
Smiling because you didn't even look, but you said exactly what I wrote down. Yeah, kind of. The other thing I wanted to say, thanks for the helpful consult last week. Oh, but a partner who's on the fence about CNM and says he only wants someone who wants him for the rest of his life. If you really want someone, shouldn't you be willing to at least try it out before giving up on the entire relationship?
But I want to know how they know that they're going to have you for the rest of their life. Is that like a 5-year, 10-year guarantee? How long will you be able not to brush off? But yeah, it is interesting to find out how we might address that issue of wanting to know that we are having somebody for the rest of our life. And I think that is one of my major obstacles in subscribing to marriage, monogamy, is that we get this paper that says we will live together forever and ever, happily ever after.
Amen.
And how do we know that it's actually going to be that way? It's such a huge statement, beautiful intention, but the logistics of it, are we setting ourselves up? Is it a reasonable expectation?
Yeah, and can you be together forever and ever without being monogamous? And I think you can be. I mean, I feel like I'd like you in my life for a very long time. Yeah,
without a doubt. So there are people who've been not monogamous and been together for many, many years. And there are people who've been monogamous and not been together for many years. They are not mutually exclusive or necessary components to either way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but sometimes these things are hard to navigate, like Leslie said. And sometimes, a person thinks that they have to give up the entire relationship. And I think it's possible to work through that if everybody's open to it. So sometimes it's important to consult with somebody, talk to a professional who can help you with this, because it's not always easy to come to terms with how we feel about things and why we feel about them. So it can be us, it could be somebody else, but sometimes it's important to talk to people. So we talked a lot about communication on other talks that we've done. So check out the guides. I'm going to give you a list quickly of the ones that we covered previously. So this might be a nice memory for you. Communication, what to say and how to say it. Getting comfortable with uncomfortable and difficult conversations. We did a series on sex, desire, and communication. So we did 2 parts, one on desire and one on arousal and fantasies. Fantasies was fun, so check that out too. And then this relates back to one of the questions earlier, how to talk to kids about sex, kink, and open relating. And that was a great one that we did with Ms. Ashley of Let's Talk Sex Education with Ms. Ashley Robertson. So that's in there too. So those are great ones to go back and check if you missed them. Definitely. And so finally, our last topic, cookie.
Cookie.
So you guys thought you were being funny by suggesting cookie, or maybe you didn't. But yeah.
There's so many C words that come to mind that we did not talk about. But yeah, let's speak about cookie.
Consent, cunnilingus.
Cuckold. Cock. Yeah.
Some good ones. We might have to do C again. Come. Yeah. So I laughed when I saw this suggestion, because maybe you didn't know this or maybe you did, but I always used to refer to my pussy, vulva, as my cookie. I don't do it so much anymore. I think I was shyer before. Now I don't really care. I use the real words. But yeah, I honestly thought I had made this up.
You did.
But then I looked it up on Google, and apparently it's actually a common thing that people refer to that area as.
Collective unconscious had heard at some point, and you integrated it, or did you imagine that you had invented it? But my question really is, what kind of cookie?
Oh, well, I don't know. I feel like the one that comes to mind is chocolate chip.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But maybe it should be peanut butter, or one of those cream-filled ones, the special ones that have cream in the middle.
I was thinking good fortune cookie.
Oh, what's a good fortune? Oh, good fortune cookie. Yeah, that's cute. So I also found another definition, which I thought was funny. So I thought I would share, of a cookie monster, which to me I would think that would mean what you're laughing about, which is that,
someone who loves to eat cookies.
Someone who likes to eat cookies.
Cookie monster.
But actually, it's a term used, this is on a college campus. It's a person who invites members of the opposite gender into their dorm for sexual favors. Cookie Monster.
Who's giving the favor? Who's receiving the favor?
Well, that's interesting. So it could be either, but it said it's most commonly female identifying person that does the inviting.
Interesting. And are they going to be delivering the party favor, or are they
I
asking?
think so. Or maybe they're wanting it, but they're inviting the person in. It wasn't really specific. It was like the slang dictionary.
And how do we get these invites?
But I wanted to share, this might be TMI for some people, but for people who have a vulva, this might be good information because it was news to me. Something I recently found about my cookie.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, this might be an overshare, but I have been experiencing some vaginal dryness and pain during sex. And also I seem to be getting a lot of yeast infections and bacterial vaginosis. And it wasn't related at all to, I think, frequency of activity because it was happening during COVID. So obviously it was just you and I mostly.
How does that affect the frequency?
It's okay. So
you mean
it's common,
multiple partners?
It's commonly a case if you have multiple partners, if you're in a club or thing where people aren't careful, there could be transferring and
washing hands in between partners.
Yeah. So what I recently found out, which was interesting, is that when you have as you age, if you have estrogen in you, if that's your predominant hormone, that there's a reduction of estrogen, and that causes a thinning of the vaginal wall. And the vaginal wall apparently contributes to secretions, lubrication, and also good bacteria. And so one of the solutions that was offered to me, which seems to be, I think, working, is you can have estrogen applied topically inside of you. So you can do that via a cream, a pill, or a ring. Yeah, the ring actually lasts for 3 months.
So your gynecologist gave you a ring?
A ring, yeah. She put a ring on it. Yeah, so there you go. Just wanted to share that information. But if you want to know more about my experience, reach out to me. I'm happy to share that with you.
So how has your experience been? Has it been fruitful and productive? Is it trending in the right way? Do you feel good about it?
It's totally trending in the right way.
Sure
the pain has gone away.
Gone.
I've also started taking, I have a lot of other supplements, but I'm taking a probiotic as well. But the topical estrogen is super helpful, and it's not the same as hormone replacement because it's just internal. And I've been getting better things going on. I feel better overall. So there you go.
DM for the details.
DM for the details. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it seems to been working quite nicely for you. And not TMI. Definitely
it's not TMI, I guess.
We are to say everything. This is a safe place.
It's true.
Safe space. And part of the work of our campaign here as sex positive therapist and relationship coach is to normalize all things sexual. We are somewhere on that spectrum as human beings, and it's going to happen to you, to us. It's happened to some of us somewhere, and it is all part of the human experience. So good for you for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, I was feeling I was feeling a lot of things, and I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what was going on. It was frustrating.
But by your saying it, it might be that aha for somebody else. Being able to talk about it in a very adult, matter-of-fact kind of way really then gives us that information, and information is power. We can then say, well, maybe that would be a good alternative for me as well, or that was what was going on with me, or whatever it might be. So let's always talk about it. Let's be able to talk about things. Yeah.
And while they said to me, you're menopausal, I was like, oh, I'm getting old. I'm super happy. I decided that I wanted to go with, I got a solution to my problem. And so that's the thing I'm focusing on.
The solution.
I have a solution, and I'm feeling better.
Fantastic. Well, you took the action. You had the willingness to look at it as opposed to just turning from it and sitting with, bad, negative, comfortable feelings.
Yeah.
You're like,
it was frustrating.
Yeah.
It was it was frustrating.
Anyways.
That's it for today.
Yeah, that's
We'd
fantastic.
love to hear what you thought about today and what relational style you're doing and where you want to be if it's not where you are right now.
And how your cookie is and how you like Cookie Monsters and being a Cookie Monster and all that good stuff.
As always, if you're feeling stuck or have questions, please reach out to us. Book a free call with us. We're here to support you. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you, Tara.
Happy Monday.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
If you want to have secure, satisfying, and sexy relationships, check out our Poly Newbies digital course. It's 7 modules of all you need in one place. And as a thank you to our listeners, we're offering it at an exclusive price. Link is in the show notes, plus all the other awesome things we talked about today. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks, and have a fantastic and sexy day.